Everybody, what's going on? This is Matt, and welcome to week 5 of the Language Learning Mastermind group. I'm excited to share some of my language learning progress for the week, and of course, just talk about language learning in general. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to start off this week talking about my Russian progress, and so far it continues to go well. This week was a great week for Russian. I've already gotten my 7 hours in for the week, and I'm recording this as of Sunday morning, so there's a little bit of time left to kind of go above that level. But overall, progress is good. It's good on the vocabulary front, the grammar front, and I even practiced listening this week. But basically, I'm starting to see some acceleration in my learning. I'm really seeing a lot more effectiveness in my vocabulary acquisition with learning new words, with my ability to recall existing words that I've already learned. Grammar concepts are slowly becoming more and more clear, and I just feel as though I'm a lot more effective compared to the first week or the second week where things were very slow, everything was very new. But now that I'm kind of getting immersed in the process, I'm getting more immersed into the language itself, I really am starting to see some acceleration, which I'm very, very happy about. So, kind of breaking down each of the areas on the vocabulary acquisition front, it's going really well. As I mentioned, I have seen some acceleration in my learning. I'm learning words a little bit quicker than I was, and I feel as though a lot of the words that I have kind of learned in air quotes, I'm better able to recall them a little bit quicker. And so I think I attribute a lot of that to a lot more repetitions for the words, because something that I noticed was that it was taking me a lot longer to learn some of these words versus my expectations. And so, kind of one thing I did to remedy that was just review the words a little bit more often and get a little bit more repetitions in. And I think that's really kind of been a big difference maker, just a small little change, as I kind of mentioned in some of my other videos, to kind of increase that efficiency for learning a little bit more. So that's been really great. I'm very happy with the progress. It's not lightning fast just because there is, some differences between English and Russian in terms of just the language. And I think that influences how quickly you can learn words or how hard or easy it is. But overall, I think the progress has been going very well. Like I said, I have seen some acceleration in terms of just my momentum in general, and I'm very happy with that. One thing that I have noticed though is there is, I think, some difficulty at times with just remembering the right verb for the imperfective and perfective. So that's kind of a unique concept in Russian where you might have two verbs that basically mean the same thing, but you use them in a different context. So one might be a continuous habitual action and one might be represent a completed action. So you have something like gavarit or skazat, for example. And I won't try to explain the grammar to anyone that's not learning Russian, but basically I think that that's made verb acquisition, at least on the vocabulary front, a little bit tougher. But I'm going to keep going with my current strategy and just see how things go. I don't think it's worth changing up too much, but it has been something I've noticed a little bit tricky compared to some of the other words, right? I think that learning some nouns and adjectives have been a little bit easier than some of the verbs, just because you might forget, oh, okay, was this the imperfective verb or the perfective verb for this particular word? So just something I noticed. I'm going to be kind of monitoring that as I go forward, but overall, vocabulary progress is going really well. Next, on the grammar front, nothing too new there. It's just some incremental review of some of the concepts. Something that I've been really focused in on is just trying to remember the present tense endings in Russian conjugation and some of the irregular rules, because I do want to eventually kind of get to a place where I can start to try to practice speaking just a little bit, or just kind of slowly be moving in that direction over time. And obviously, I think that's an important part, right? To be able to kind of conjugate some of the verbs. And I think that there's a little bit of intimidation on my front to do that, just because there's so many irregular rules. And you just kind of don't know, okay, I have to remember if this verb is a conjugation one or a conjugation two verb, or if there's an irregularity to it. And so I think there's a little bit of hesitation to speak, but I'm not really in a rush to speak, to be honest with you. It's not something that is very important to me right now. Really, I'm just focused in on getting the fundamentals down and getting a lot of words in. So, I know that maybe some people kind of expect me to start, speaking Russian in these videos, and I plan on it. But I don't want to kind of treat these videos as if they're like this kind of show off, these show off videos where people kind of like, oh, look at my progress in this language after a month, and then they kind of like, write a script out and just try to show off the language. That's not really my intention with this. I plan on doing that, but just to kind of give a perspective with it, I think that really for me a lot of it's just focused in on the fundamentals, right? It's just trying to get the vocabulary down, get some understanding of the grammar, and the speaking will come. So I think that that's just kind of my perspective on all of it, right? I think there is a little bit of intimidation just because there's just so many exceptions in Russian. I mean, with the present tense, there's a lot that can go on, and I know at some point there's just going to be mistakes. You just kind of have to dive in, but I'm okay with just kind of the way that I'm approaching things right now, and it'll come, and I'm sure I will show off some of that speaking. But I think that it's important to just kind of realize, hey, what do you need to focus in on, and what's going to bring you the most value. And I notice just for myself, it's a lot of it. It's just going to come down to that vocabulary acquisition. I know that, and a lot of times there's this temptation to want to speak or just to rush to those particular activities, and I'm just kind of trying to focus in on what's going to give me the most value, right? I don't want to rush to kind of get to a place where I can create a YouTube video out of it of my Russian progress after 1 month, right? It's not my objective with this. So I think that that's just kind of my perspective on the grammar front. Just really slowly learning some of the kind of the big ticket items like the present tense, just so that slowly that's kind of preparing me to speak later on. But like I said, there's not really a rush with that. And kind of just the last point that I would bring up is I actually practiced listening a little bit this week to Ruski Novosti, which Russian news. There might be some incorrect grammar there, but anyways, I tried to practice some just listening in Russian, and I was surprised at how successful it was. I just put on some Russian news, and obviously the majority of it was a wall of sound that I didn't understand. But my main objective with it was just to kind of just get a little bit more comfortable with some sounds, just kind of hear how natives are speaking the language, just with just the way that they pronounce certain words, just to kind of just try out listening just to see where I'm at and just see if I could pick out some words. And I was surprised that I was able to hear a couple of words that I've learned in the news itself. That was very surprising to me, and I'm very happy about that, right? Obviously, it's just a word here or there. But it's a victory, right? I think that it's important to kind of get the victories in every place that you can, and that was pretty big for me. And I think that also just kind of getting more comfortable with the sounds and just listening in general was also good and effective for me as well. And it was something novel. It wasn't that much time investment for me. It was just 15, 30 minutes or something along those lines. But I have just kind of did a little bit of listening, and for the most part, I thought it was pretty good. Like I said, nothing dramatic, not like fully comprehending everything going on, just a couple of words here and there. But I did do some listening, and I thought it went pretty well. So, for this week's topic, I wanted to talk about stamina in language learning, and in particular, stamina when it comes to just kind of staying positive and kind of patting yourself on the back, ever so often, right? Just taking a look back at your progress and just to kind of reassure yourself that, hey, I am making progress. Look at what I've achieved this month, or over the last 6 months, or the last day, or whatever it is, because it just takes so long to get to a high skill level and to reach fluency in a language. And unfortunately with language learning, a lot of times there's not these very clear positive affirmations that are coming at you all the time, right? It very much kind of is the step function of kind of positive affirmations. And so I think it's really important at points is just to always kind of keep your stamina up by looking back at some of your progress and some of your results, and just to kind of give yourself that positive momentum moving forward. So I'll give you a good example. So I've been learning Russian for a little bit over a month now, and in some ways, when I look at what I know, it's not that much, right? I know some words, I know some grammar, and when you're in the kind of the thick of things, when you're just kind of learning words day in day out, getting a little bit better grammar, maybe you're going through an intro app. You're kind of doing your daily or weekly routine. It's very easy to kind of get lost in the things that you do just on a day by day basis with language learning, right? And I'm just slowly, going along, learning new words, and progress is moving, but I'm not, obviously fluent in a month. But that being said, when I look back at what I know now, just from a words perspective, or even grammar, it's significant, right? It's significant from the first week. It's significant from 2 weeks ago, and even last week. So when I look at that, I go, okay, this is actually pretty awesome. I know a good amount of words in Russian right now. And the thing about it too is that of the words that I know, I can kind of recall them pretty quickly. And same with some of the grammar concepts out there. So I think that's a big victory for me, right? In a month of learning Russian, I think I've accomplished quite a bit, and like I said, it's very easy to get lost in that routine. It's very easy to get kind of lost at where you are right now and thinking ahead, right? Having a very future oriented mindset. All right, where am I going to be next year? Where am I going to be a month from now? Right? It's very easy to kind of get stuck in that forward looking viewpoint. But sometimes you want to look back just to kind of keep that stamina for the next step of the journey, right? And so when I look back at just what I knew 2 weeks ago or even a month ago, it's significant, right? Obviously, it's not like beginner to advanced, but it is a notable amount of progress. For me, it's 30 plus hours of Russian learning, which is totally awesome, and I'm very happy about that. And when I look back at that, it really it makes me feel good, right? It gives me a sense of accomplishment, and it keeps that kind of momentum for me moving forward, right? I've seen what I've been able to accomplish with a month, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I wonder what another month is going to do for me, or about 3 months, or 6 months, or even a year. So I think it's important, like just given this example, to look back and just kind of remember to kind of pat yourself on the back. And so, just to expand on that a little bit, so another example, when you're using compelling content to learn a language, maybe this is kind of more like at an intermediate level or advanced level or something along those lines. Let's say you are reading in a foreign language. You are trying to read newspapers, read books. Maybe you're trying to watch some Netflix shows, play some video games in a foreign language. I think at times, sometimes it's very easy to kind of want to think about the activities in this kind of very binary way, right? Either I can enjoy the content and use the content fully, or I can't. And in times like this, it's very easy to kind of get a little bit disappointed and frustrated about your progress, even though it's amazing that you are, even attempting to use the Netflix show to learn the language or to read to learn the language. And while it might not be perfect, maybe you don't understand everything in the show. Maybe the reading is somewhat of a struggle. You are using the material and you're learning, and that's awesome, right? You weren't probably able to do that, in the past as a beginner, right? And you are, struggling, but you're learning, right? And you're attempting to use some of that compelling content, whether it's reading, listening to podcasts, Netflix shows, or whatever it is. So I think that it's very important to just consider that when you're trying to use these compelling activities, because chances are it's not going to be 100%, right? It's you're going to struggle at times using that compelling content. From reading, you're not going to know every single word. Some of the grammar is going to be complicated. Listening is going to be challenging, but you're using the content, and you should feel good about that, right? Think of that as a victory as well, right? Maybe it's with every new episode of the show you're watching, you're getting you feel as though you're getting a little bit better, or as you read more, right? Maybe it's a struggle, but hey, you're learning new words and you're using reading at the same time. That's an awesome victory, right? It's very easy to get lost into the forward projection where you're thinking, I am struggling with every sentence as I read this book. But hey, you're reading. That's a huge victory, and you're only going to get better, and you're using compelling content. So to try not to think about some of the compelling content in that sense of it's not easy right now, right? I think it's important to once again, pat yourself on the back and give yourself those victories, because when you have that kind of positive mindset about things, I think it's a lot easier to keep going and keep that forward momentum as you learn the language. And the thing with compelling content is that, it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a challenge. The chances are you're going to struggle with the book, or you're going to struggle with some of the audio content on a Netflix show or a video game. If there was no difficulty, if there was no challenge, then there would be nothing to learn, right? So I think that it's just good to have that kind of expectation that when you're using compelling content from a reading perspective, a listening perspective, or whatever it is, that you're going to run into challenges, and it's not going to be this just easy experience, right? When you're practicing reading in a foreign language, it's not going to be at the same pace and with the same ease as you read your native language, or when you play video games or watch Netflix shows. But I think it's good to, once again, look at the victories there, right? Pat yourself on the back and say, hey, listen, I wasn't able to do this 3 months ago. This is great. Or look at how much I've learned over the last week, the last month, the last year. So I think that, especially when using compelling content, it's very easy to get frustrated and kind of get overwhelmed by how difficult it still is, especially when you put in a lot of time and energy into language learning. But remember, take the victories where you can. Be very liberal with those compliments. Be very liberal with kind of that positive momentum about your successes. Look back at all the new words that you've learned. And be happy about that, or the grammar that you've acquired, or how you've gotten better at speaking or listening. I think that's very important. And I just wanted to kind of take a little bit of time to kind of talk about success stories with language learnings, victories for the week, maybe some struggles, something like that. And I think that it's important to just share, some of those victories, per the subject matter that we just talked about, of how language learning has gone. So for me, I think that a couple of victories that have been pretty big was, the first, as I mentioned, was just practicing listening with Russian for the first time and being able to hear a couple of words here and there. That's a big victory. So I consider that a success, right? I think that I've continued to learn new words in Russian this week, and that progress has gone really well, especially when I just look back. From 4 weeks ago, or even last week, I know a lot more words now, and the words that I do know, I'm able to recall them a lot quicker and a lot more effectively. So, those are some of my victories. And I would encourage you, what are some of your victories for the week or even the month, right? And leave a comment below and, share it. And, maybe that gives somebody inspiration or some ideas with their language learning. Don't overlook the value that your comments can provide. I really believe that. I do think that very thoughtful comments can really help other people. So, what are your victories for the week? And, even if let's say it wasn't a victory filled week, maybe what were some struggles, some obstacles that you faced, and how can you overcome them for the new week? And I think another thing to point out, and it's a little bit off topic, but I do think it's relevant, is just to, if you, let's say you're struggling right now and language learning is tough, you're lacking motivation, or maybe you just feel like you just can't, you're just going to run into difficulties, you're not going to learn the language, you're not believing in yourself. I think that something that has always been, very inspiring for me, something that is helpful is to read history, to look at history. History is filled with stories where people have lost everything, or they just seemed completely defeated, and they've come back and achieved amazing and great things. And I know that that's not exactly related to language learning, but I think that that lesson is very it's something that we can apply to all of our lives. And it's something that we can apply to our language learning, even though it might be an unrelated subject, right? Where there are plenty of people throughout all of history, throughout all of time, that have faced struggles, that have faced difficulties, and have been kind of, broken down to a very low point, right? Where they've been kind of utterly defeated, right? Or maybe they were it's just it seemed as though there was no chance for their success, but they managed to fight, persevere, and keep going and go on to achieve great things. And obviously, that seems kind of dramatic, but we can take that lesson of perseverance, that lesson of strength, and apply it to our language learning, where we get ourselves disciplined, we believe in ourselves, we overcome the obstacles and adversity, and learn the language. So I think that while that example is not exactly related to language learning, right? It's like, well, how is that going to help me learn the grammar? How is that going to help me to learn the words? Um, while it might seem unrelated, and it really is, I think, an important idea and a relevant idea, despite the um, disconnect with language learning, because that when we look at history, when we see those success stories and people overcoming and persevering, we can do it too, right? We have strength, just like all these people that have lived throughout history, and that should be inspiring, right? So, if you're down on just your confidence with language learning, or maybe even just something else in life, it doesn't even have to be about language learning. I think something that's really good to do is just read history. I think it's overlooked a lot by society. I think unfortunately a lot of people don't read history despite it being filled with tons of lessons and a lot of fascinating just kind of cause and effect events. But if you're kind of just struggling maybe on the motivation front, or you're feeling kind of defeated, I would encourage you just to look at some lessons from history. Look at some success stories, even if it's not related to language learning, because I think that might just give you the motivation to keep persevering and keep going despite the obstacles. So now I wanted to kind of transfer over to kind of the weekly review, weekly accountability, and I would just ask, how was your week in language learning, and what did you do right, and what did you kind of maybe not do so great. I think it's important once again, as I've said in kind of the other videos, to take a look at how your week went, both good and bad. Taking just 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it is, just to look at what you've done right and what you've done wrong. It can really help you for the next week to just get a little bit more efficiency out of your language learning, to get a little bit more fun out of your language learning, right? This reflection is just there to kind of help us moving forward. So, how did your week go? Were you disciplined? Maybe your language learning was kind of very inconsistent. Maybe an activity that you're using is not very fun, or you're starting to kind of realize that this is not really working out. Maybe I need to change my strategy up. Maybe I need to start reading in the language. Maybe my speaking is just really falling off and I need to start spending a lot more time. And so I'm going to adjust accordingly. So I think that just take that review, take that minute, take that 5 minutes to just think, and if you can write it down. Hey, what went right this week? What didn't go so well? And attack the new week with a game plan, right? A plan where you can get a little bit more efficiency, right? And don't overlook that, right? If it's a 10% improvement, a 15% improvement, or a gradual adjustment of your strategy, which then affects the coming weeks and coming months, that adds up, right? And especially if you're able to identify problems and identify new methods and new strategies on how to approach things, and if you do that now versus maybe waiting a month, that's huge, right? Because now you're getting the efficiency gains for a longer period of time. So just think, what went right and what went wrong this week. So, one thing for me, for example, was that, as I've been learning new Russian words, I found that sometimes it's just a lot better to get a little bit more repetitions in for some of the vocabulary words, right? Just to learn them a little bit better rather than trying to take on too many new words, right? Especially because of the difference between English and Russian in terms of cognates and things like that. It can be kind of inefficient, right? To pick up too many new words where it's just taking forever to kind of get those words into my long-term memory. So, kind of something I did to remedy that was just to once again just kind of give it a little bit more repetitions in to those words, right? To slow down my pace just a bit, just to kind of ensure that hey, I'm learning these words and I'm not taking too much on at once, right? So just something as small as that. can be a big game changer moving forward. And maybe the new strategy you come up with isn't very effective, it doesn't work out, but hey, you've explored a new avenue, and I think that's big as well. So once again, it's just examples like that where just changing up things a little bit can help you quite a bit in the end of the day. And that's what I had for today's video. And of course, definitely leave a comment below. Share some of your language experience, maybe some tips and tricks that other people can benefit from. Don't overlook the value that your comments can provide to others. And with all that being said, thanks again, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.